Course in Miracles. My microphone is not where it should be. We are in A Course in Miracles, workbook for students, lesson 73 in part 1 of the workbook. I will there be light. Today we are considering the will you share with God. This is not the same as the ego's idle wishes out of which darkness and nothingness arise. The will you share with God has all the power of creation in it. The ego's idle wishes are unshared and therefore have no power at all. Its wishes are not idle in the sense that they can make a world of illusions in which your belief can be very strong. But they are idle indeed in terms of creation. They make nothing that is real. Idle wishes and grievances are partners or co-makers in picturing the world you see. The wishes of the ego gave rise to it, and the ego's need for grievances, which are necessary to maintain it, peopled it with figures which seem to attack you and call for righteous judgment. They become the middlemen the ego employs to traffic in grievances and stand between your awareness and your brother's reality. Beholding them, you do not know your brothers nor yourself. I'm going to stop and read 101 and 102. I'm looking for 101. I always seem to miss it. I don't know why. 101, call out to me. Where are you? Please forgive me. Thank you for doing this with me. Do you see it? Can you tell me where it is? Gosh. Okay. Wow, right there. I will there be light, 101. Genesis 1:3. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then 102 we just read. They become the middlemen the ego employs to traffic in grievances and stand between your awareness and your brother's reality. 102. The middleman is someone who buys goods from a producer and sells them to consumers, thus enabling the producer's goods to reach the consumers. In this case, the ego, the producer, is using attacking bodies, the middlemen, which seem to call for righteous judgment to induce the consumer to hold grievances, the goods. The attacking bodies, in other words, are the ego's means of getting you to buy what it's selling, grievances. All right. Paragraph 3. Your will is lost to you in this strange bartering in which guilt is traded back and forth and grievances increase with each exchange. Can such a world have been created by the will the Son of God shares with his Father? Did God create disaster for his Son? Creation is the will of both together. Would God create a world that kills himself? Today, we will try once more to reach the world which is in accordance with your will. The light is in it because it does not oppose the will of God. It is not heaven, but the light of heaven shines on it. Darkness has vanished. The ego's idle wishes have been withdrawn. Yet the light which shines upon this world reflects your will, and so it must be in you that we look for it. Your picture of the world can only mirror what is within. The source of neither light nor darkness can be found without. Grievances darken your mind, and you look out upon a darkened world. Forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts your will, and lets you look upon a world of light. I don't know about you, but I love the language of the Course. We have repetitively emphasized that the barrier of grievances is easily passed and cannot stand between you and salvation. The reason is very simple. Do you really want to be in hell? Do you really want to weep and suffer and die? Forget the ego's arguments which seek to prove all this is really heaven. You know it is not so. You cannot want this for yourself. There is a point beyond which illusions cannot go. Suffering is not happiness, and it is happiness that you really want. Such is your will in truth. And so salvation is your will as well. You want to succeed in what we are trying to do today. We undertake it with your blessing and with your glad accord. We will succeed today if you remember that you will salvation for yourself. You will to accept God's plan because you share in it. You have no will that can really oppose it, and you do not want to do so. Salvation is for you. And above all else, you want the freedom to remember who you really are. Today, it is the ego which stands powerless before your will. Your will is free, and nothing can prevail against it. Therefore, we undertake the exercises for today in happy confidence, certain that we will find what it is your will to find, and remember what it is your will to remember. No idle wishes can detain us, nor deceive us with an illusion of strength. Today, let your will be done and end forever the insane belief that it is hell in place of heaven that you choose. I'm going to stop there because I see I skipped 103, 104, and 105. So let me find 103. There it is. We have repeatedly emphasized that the barrier of grievances is easily passed and cannot stand between you and salvation. 103. Determined to go past the clouds of grievances, reach out and touch them in your mind. Brush them aside with your hand. Feel them resting on your cheeks and forehead and eyelids as you go through them. Go on. Clouds cannot stop you. Surely you do not want to remain in the clouds looking vainly for idols there, when you could so easily walk on into the light of real salvation. And then we're going to find 104. Your will is free, and nothing can prevail against it. Matthew 16:18. And I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And lastly, 105. Today let your will be done. Matthew 6:10. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on this earth as it is in heaven. In this case, rather than praying to God that his will be done, Jesus is asking us to let our will for salvation be done. We will begin our longer practice periods with the recognition that God's plan for salvation, and only his, is wholly in accord with your will. It is not the purpose of an alien power thrust upon you unwillingly. It is the one purpose here on which you and your Father are in perfect accord. You will succeed today, the time appointed for the release of the Son of God from hell and from all idle wishes. His will is now restored to your awareness. He is willing this very day to look upon the light in him and be saved. After reminding yourself of this and determining to keep your will clearly in mind, tell yourself with gentle firmness and quiet certainty, I will there be light. Let me behold the light that reflects God's will and mine. Then let your will assert itself, joined to the power of God, united with yourself. Put the rest of the practice period under their guidance, join with them as they lead the way. In the shorter practice periods, again make a declaration of what you really want. Say, I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. This should be repeated several times an hour. It is most important, however, to apply today's idea in this form immediately you are tempted to hold any to hold a grievance of any kind. This will help you let your grievance go instead of cherishing them in the darkness. Cherishing them and hiding them in the darkness. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the commentary in my tore up book. I will there be light. Practice instructions. The purpose of this lesson is another attempt to reach the light in you, which will show you the real world. There's 2 longer practice periods for 10 to 15 minutes. I see this lesson as very similar to lesson 69, where you spent a beginning phase reflecting on how much you want to find the light in you, and then the ending phase entered in a meditation in which you tried to actually reach the light, that light. Spend several minutes thinking about how salvation is your true will, what you really want. To prepare yourself, I recommend rereading paragraphs 6 to 9, frequently inserting your name while you do so. Think about how you truly want to reach the light in you. Think about how salvation is your will, not an alien purpose thrust upon you. Since reaching the light is your will, you can be confident in your attempt to find it today. Carry this attitude of reaching the light is my will into your meditation. Then, with gentle firmness and quiet certainty, tell yourself, I will there be light. Let me behold the light that reflects God's will and mine. The rest of the practice period is a meditation in which you try to reach the light in you. Hold your true will in mind and let it, joined with God and yourself, lead you to that radiant light at the center of your mind. Remember to respond to wandering thoughts with the idea, and most of all, remember to stay in touch with your will to experience the light. Frequent reminders, several per hour. Say, I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. If you say it as a genuine declaration of what you really want, you will get more out of it. Response to temptation. Whenever you are tempted to hold a... blah, 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 sorry. I know I do that all the time. Thank you for being here with me. All right. Response to temptation. Whenever you are tempted to hold a grievance, it is important to immediately say, I will there be light. Darkness is not my will, remembering that it is not your will to have grievances. Will release your grip on them. Commentary. This is a lesson about our will, the will you share with God. I'd like to focus just on what is specifically said in this lesson about our will. First, it is a will we share with God. That is what the Course calls our will is identical to God's. I'm all caught up here, I apologize. So our will is identical to God's will. We want the same thing God wants for us because we were created as extensions of His will. What else could our will be except the same as His? Your fatherhood and your Father are one. God wills you to create, and your will is His. It follows then that you will to create, since your will follows from His. And being an extension of His will, yours must be the same. Our true will, which by the Course's definition is our only will, is not the same as the ego's wishes, the manifold variety of thoughts that seem to conflict with God's will and with each other. From the Course's standpoint, these are not our will, just ego wishes. A desire to attack, no matter how strongly we may consciously identify with it, cannot be our will. It can only be an idle wish of the ego. Our will represents the self as God created us. Anything that seems to come from a different source is not will, but wish. What this means in practical terms is that our ego thoughts are not a part of our true self, and in reality, we do not will them. The will you share with God has all the power of creation in it. Our will, therefore, must be realized. Nothing can oppose it. We will have what we truly want because our will has all the power of creation, while the ego's wishes have no power at all. We exist in the illusion that our ego's wishes are almost all-powerful, and what we may think of as our higher will often seems weak by comparison. This is simply not true. It can only appear to be true for a limited time. Eventually, inevitably, the will of ourself must be done. Your will is lost to you in this strange bartering. Our conscious awareness is out of touch with the will of ourself. Our ego's need for grievances has created shadow figures in our minds, figures that seem to attack you, images from the past that we superimpose over our perceptions in the present so that we react to people in the present as if they were these figures from our past. This traffic in grievances has blocked our real will from our awareness, covering it with the wishes of the ego until those wishes seem to be our will. We are no longer aware of what it is we really want. Can such a world have been created by the will the Son of God shares with his Father? The obvious answer is no. How could we have willed a world of attack and judgment? This is obviously not something anyone would want. The world we see reflects the ego's wishes, not our will. Today, we will try once more to reach the world that is in accordance with your will. This is the real world as the Course defines that term. There is a world in accord with our will. We are not seeing it now, but we can. Yet the light that shines upon this world reflects your will, and so it must be in you that we will look for it. The real world reflects our true will, what we truly want in our eternal self. The light that shines on it is in us, and we can find that world by looking within ourselves for the light. Forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts your will, and lets you look upon a world of light. Forgiveness lets go of grievances, thus removing the dark spots on our mind that are being projected as black blotches of darkness on the world, just as a dust mote in a movie projector throws a black spot on the screen. Forgiveness allows us to see the world as our self truly wants to see it. It reasserts our will. Suffering is not happiness, and it is happiness you really want. Such is your will and truth. It seems silly to say something like suffering is not happiness, and yet it seems silly to say something like, and yet we often, this is getting too low for me, and yet we often treat it as if it were happiness. We seem to prefer our pain over risking something new. At least we know how to suffer, and we are oddly afraid that we won't know how to function if we are happy. But we don't really want suffering. How could we? How could anyone? Our will, in truth, is happiness. And so salvation is your will as well. If we want happiness, we want salvation, because salvation is happiness. Salvation means happiness. We want to be relieved of suffering. We want to be happy. It amazes me sometimes how powerful a message this can be. Most of the time it seems as if I have a split mind. Part of me wants to be happy, and part of me sabotages my every effort. Isn't it peculiar how common is this thought? It's too good to last, or nothing lasts forever, or into each life a little rain must fall. Something inside us tells us that we can't be happy all the time, and that we don't deserve it, or even that we couldn't stand it. Ridiculous ideas. The will of our true self, with all the power of creation behind it, is that we be happy. Therefore, we will be. It must be so. You want to accept God's plan because you share in it. You have no will that can really oppose it, and you do not want to do so. I really do want the will of God. My will is the same as His. I want to accept salvation. There is no part of my will that opposes it. Only idle, paltry ego wishes seem to. And so I can't miss. I can't fail. My will is not different from God's. Above all else, you want the freedom to remember who you really are. Today, it is the ego that stands powerless before your will. Your will is free, and nothing can prevail against it. The power of your will and mine can bring light into this world if we simply choose to assert it. We simply realize we simply realize what we truly want and say, I will there be light. And there will be light, just as God said, let there be light, and there was light. Because our will is creative, as is He, as are you. So go shine that beautiful light, and thank you for being here with me on this journey. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.